Hey everyone, Ethereal here, and today we're gonna be talking about my impressions of Yelan. And I know this video is a bit late because Yelan has been out for, let's say, like, what's the date today? That's fucking 21st. It's been like almost 3 weeks since she came out, but I was thinking, hey, I may as well make a video talking about her since I'm a Yelan sim. So, just quickly going into the build as the video is just playing in the background. My Yelan is currently roughly like 73-140 if I recall the stats correctly, with about 35,000 HP with like maybe 3 different elements in the team or something like that. Running Favonius Bow with a 4 emblem along with a HP circlet and a HP Sands, and of course Triple Crown because she's one of my 6 waifus. By the way, check me out on twitch.tv/etherealmusic if you haven't really already. So let's look at things objectively before I put my bias as a Yelan sim. So reading my freaking script right here, so we're gonna look at the characters with damage, utility or support, their kit and how fluid it plays, their team synergy, and obviously the aesthetics and personality, and in terms of whether the character is future-proof based on what we've learned. So in terms of Yelan's personal damage, you've seen videos of people running C0 Yelan comparing it to say the likes of C6 Xingqiu, and you've seen people running with C6 Yelan, which she is incredibly busted as every C6 5-star should be. So if you look at my personal Yelan damage because it's C0 Triple Crown, so this is basically peak FTP potential without considering constellations of any 5-star weapons like her personal weapon Aqua Simulacra. Her lingering lifeline actually does a decent amount of damage, roughly like 20k per, but I think what makes it really good is just the fact that it has this nice utility, which we'll talk about later. So my lifeline can do roughly like, let's say 20k average hydro damage, and you can apply those on multiple enemies, which will, damage wise, she does a lot of damage. And of course if you look at her burst, right, it exquisite throws, it fires three of those dice, so three exquisite throws, and each of them dealing roughly 70,000 per, which accumulates to 21,000. And if you compare to the likes of my Xingqiu, while she's being paired in Hu Tao in the background, my Xingqiu with a slightly weird build only does roughly like 2.4k per sword. So if I do like some quick maths in my head, that's about 7.2k. Actually no, that math is actually kind of wrong. Hold up, so let me actually do the math. So that math should be roughly about, roughly like 7.2k, 8k. I mean, at best, if I get some buffs, maybe 9k per. So obviously in terms of damage, comparing Yelan and Xingqiu, her damage is pretty well off. And if you've seen people run Yelan solo going against Abyss, or maybe Yelan as the main DPS, and she does quite a good amount of damage. So in terms of the damage department, that is pretty secure. And so for the next part, let's look at Yelan's utility / supporting capabilities. So I'm looking at the wiki on my other screen. The part of a kit that I want to talk about is here Ascension 4. So based on this description, basically as long as your burst is in play, for every second that the exquisite throw is up, your active character's overall damage will be increased at a base of 3.5% initially, at 1% initially, and 3.5% every second, thus maxing out at 50%. So in terms of utility, unlike Xingqiu, while Xingqiu has damage reduction and a lot of hydro application compared to say C0 Yelan versus C6 Xingqiu, Yelan definitely has a higher personal damage, and this part of the utility means you might sacrifice say the likes of Xingqiu's hydro application or damage reduction, but if you use Yelan in say something like a Raiden National, or like I like to dub it as the Rational team, you are able to do the rotation in such a way that you can maximize Raiden's damage and turn her into a pseudo hyper carry with the help of the likes of like Bennett, because you know, the Raiden National team. So that is one other thing. And that, as far as I can remember, the only other utility that I just remembered on the top of my head is her elemental skill. If you're actually able to use her elemental skill to stagger smaller enemies and drag them down towards you, like a pseudo venti black hole or sucrose suction thing, depending on how you do it. So the trick is, what you want to do is you want to hold E, and then you want to mark every single enemy, and then you want to reposition yourself so that once you trigger her lingering lifeline and the lifeline explodes, it pulls all the enemies towards her, thus creating like a pseudo suction thing. And generally I like to use that in the gameplay that you can see in the background, and that's all her utility she has, and I think that's pretty good. So moving on to the next part is her kit and her fluidity. So of course we have her normal attacks, which is the only thing that really scales off attack, while the rest of the kit scales off HP, which is generally really good because we have other HP scaling characters, but not a lot of them are known to be HP scaling damage dealers until Yelan came out. So if we know her normal attacks, we focus on, say, something like a Breakthrough Barb, which scales off a HP. So in order for you to obtain Breakthrough Barb, you have to be Yelan has to be 5 seconds. It has to be 5 seconds for Yelan to be off combat or off field or not being in combat. And maybe if you trigger lingering lifelines, there's a 34% chance that you will gain a Breakthrough Barb. So that really adds like this really nice fluidity to the skill, because I believe the burst, right, the exquisite throw can actually trigger if you every time a lingering lifeline explodes. So like the nice tech that I think I Win to Lose has already covered this is where what you do is that when you start a combat, when you start the, let's say, the Abyss run with Yelan, you can do a breakthrough, you can shoot her Breakthrough Barb, and then you immediately use your exquisite throw, and then you do a simple normal attack into a lingering lifeline, and if you get like a Breakthrough Barb, you can do it again, and you can probably see like a good amount of damage going on. So in terms of fluidity, I think anyone who owns Yelan, and personally from my personal experience, she plays very, very smoothly. Her animations is very well in tone, the sound effects is really well done, and there is a really good synergy between her own personal kits. So I guess we can say that she is pretty good on this department. So moving on for the next part, we have the team synergy part. So given how Yelan has always been compared to Xingqiu even before her release, after her official teaser or trailer reveal, people tend to take the argument to compare, oh, is C0 Yelan better than C6 Xingqiu? Why should you pull for Yelan? Should you pull, or should you just not pull for Yelan because you already have a C6 Xingqiu? Vice versa, yada yada yada. And for some reason, eventually people figured out that instead of pulling Yelan treating Yelan as a second Xingqiu, people just run like a weird Hu Tao vape team where they put Yelan and Xingqiu in the same team, and apparently I've heard it's been really effective. So back to the main point before I go on a tangent. So team synergy, one of the teams that I really like to run right now with Yelan especially would be the Raiden National team, because it, thanks to the Bennett buff, combine the Bennett buff with Yelan's Ascension 4 to buff the active character's damage. You can see my Raiden in the background if the gameplay is just there, that I can actually like hit up to like 160 to maybe 180k, I'm not exactly too sure what the numbers is. And under the Bennett buff effect, my Raiden can actually do like normal attacks or charge attacks up to like 15, 16, 20k, which is quite comparable to, say, something like a solo C2, C3 Raiden. So that's one of it. So in other teams that you can use it on is probably the likes of, say, like a Taser team where you play Xingqiu with Yelan, and of course use some Hu Tao Yelan, although there's some technicalities there that I won't really explain, you can probably go look it up. So I guess in terms of team synergy, right, the best way to summarize it is that whatever team that has Xingqiu in it that is really, really good, you can like replace that with Yelan, unless you value Xingqiu's Hydro application versus damage. That's all that really comes down to. So in terms of team synergy, I say she's pretty good, and I've been having fun with her. So the next part would be aesthetic and personality. Of course, aesthetic wise, we all know the whole joke about armpits. No, let's just not go too far about that so that I don't get demonetized or something. In terms of aesthetics, she has a she looks really good. That's all I can really say. She looks really good. She has this nice coat at her back that makes her look like as if she's wearing the same coat that Kea does, because I remember when I saw that coat the first time, I was like, wait, how does that freaking coat behind her stick on? Like, is this like Kea but Hydro and Leeway or something like that? So we have that, and overall she looks really good. Personality wise, obviously she's that kind of person who takes her job really seriously, but she's also the kind of person who's also like if anything doesn't interest me, I will not waste my time on it, and I'll move on to whatever the heck that I need to do. She always gets the job done, but at some point I'm pretty damn sure she just does this just for the fun of it. And if nothing interests her, she's gonna be like, alright, I'm gonna have my head out, I'm gonna go to sleep or something. So let's just not make this video too long. So in terms of whether Yelan is future-proof based on the things that we have mentioned just now, I would say she's pretty solid. Whatever team that you can use on that uses Xingqiu, you can also use her on, and even if you don't use her like separately with Xingqiu, you can also use her together with Xingqiu, or you can just use her in whatever teams. Overall, I think she's a very solid 5-star version of Xingqiu. She looks really good. Her personal damage output is way higher than the likes of Xingqiu, albeit sacrificing a bit of that Hydro application. And yeah, and Hydro being one of the four main elements, or what I like to call the meta trinity of elements, which is Hydro, Pyro, and Cryo. So being one of those elements, depending on how your kid is, might or might not solidify your position in the meta, and I think she is definitely one of the more interesting characters out there. So yeah, she is very future proof, and hopefully when Dendro comes out some far in the future, maybe we'll see something interesting going on. Suscage, yep, Suscage. So let's just end this off with a personal rating. I would say, in terms of based on the points that we raised up, I would have to agree with most other content creators, where Yelan, out of, let's say out of 10, she's a solid 7 out of 10, solid 7 out of 10, solid 7.5 out of 10. And my personal rating as a biased triple crown Yelan simp or some shit like that, I would say she's a very solid 8 out of 10. She's one of the more fun characters that I've been able to play out of all my waifus right now. Aside from Maya, of course, she's still my number 1. But yeah, I guess I don't know who the hell will be watching this, but yeah, I like, subscribe. Let me know if you like me to do more of these videos. This is my first time doing this kind of recording, so if I fumble up mid recording, that's just kind of normal. Anyways, see you guys next time. Bye.